During this video, we look at a scenario where an attacker bypassed a broken two-factor authentication mechanism to log in into the victim user account entirely based on the victim username and without knowing the password. For the purpose of this exercise, we use a lab from Web Security Academy, and you can find the link to this lab in the video description. To solve this lab, we need to log in into victim account called Carlos. Alright, let's jump in and get started by clicking on Access the Lab. From the application homepage, we click on My Account. We use our account username and password that we got from lab description to log in into the application. We need to carefully observe how the two-factor authentication works and how it performs each step of the authentication. First, we turn on burp intercept. Then in the login page, we fill out the username and password fields with our account credentials, then click on Login. In burp, we see the HTTP post request to login endpoint. We note the username and password in the body of the request. So this is the HTTP request for the first step of the authentication. We forward this request. Since the provided credentials were valid, the application is redirecting us to login to web page. In the HTTP response, we notice a cookie called verify, and its value is our account username. Let's forward this response. Now the browser is making an HTTP GET request to log into web page. We see the verify cookie in the request. Let's forward the request. The application returns the contents of login to web page. So we have completed the first step of the authentication, and now we have been redirected to login to web page, where we need to provide the 4-digit security code. The application sends the security code to the user email. From top of the screen, we click on Email Client. We see the email containing the security code. Let's copy this code and go back to the login page. We paste the security code in the input field, then click on Login. In burp, we see the HTTP post request to login to endpoint. We check if the provided security code is correct. We notice the verify cookie and its value is our username. We also notice the security code in the body of the request. It seems the application is using the verify cookie to check which user is trying to complete the second step of authentication. We forward this request. Since the provided security code was correct, we get redirection HTTP response code. And in the location header, we see the application is redirecting us to /my-account. Let's forward this response. We have now completed both steps of the authentication process, and in the web browser, we see that we are logged in into our account. Before we proceed to see if we can log in into Carlos' account, let's review the two-factor authentication process in this application. We notice the application is using two separate pages for each stage of the authentication. Login web page for the first step and login to web page for the second step of the authentication. For the first step in the login page, the user provides username and password, and if the provided credentials are correct, the application assigns the user a cookie called verify, and its value is the username of the current user. Then the application redirects user to the login to page for the second step. The web browser makes an HTTP GET request containing the verify cookie for accessing the login to web page. It seems the application generates the 4-digit security code when it receives this request and sends the security code to the user email address. When the user submits the security code, the application makes an HTTP post request to log into endpoint. This request contains the verify cookie and the security code. The application is using verify cookie to check which user is trying to complete the second step of the authentication. If the provided security code is valid and is associated to the username within the verify cookie, then application allows the user to log in into his account. Since for the second step, the application only relies on the verify cookie value to check which user is trying to log in into his account, if we change the verify cookie value to victim username and brute force the 4-digit security code, then we should be able to log in into victim account without knowing the victim password. Alright, let's first log out of our account, then we go to login page. We fill out the username and password fields with our account credentials, then click on Login. In Burp, we forward the HTTP request and also the application response. In the HTTP GET request for accessing the login to web page, we change the verify cookie value to carless. This ensures the application generates a security code for this user. Then we forward the request and the application response. In the web browser, we provide the random code and click on Submit. In Burp, we see the HTTP post request for the second step of the authentication. We use this request to brute force the security code of the victim user. So we right-click on the request and choose Send to Intruder. We turn off Burp Intercept and go to the intruder. Since we only have one payload set, which is for the security code, for the attack type we choose Sniper. Then we clear the payload position by clicking on Clear button. We change the verify cookie to victim username, which is carless. Then we choose the security code parameter in the body of the request and click on Add. To configure the payload set, we go to the Payload tab. The payload set would be 1, and for the payload type, we choose numbers. To ensure the payload set generates all possible 4-digit numbers, we configure the number range and number format accordingly. Now that we have configured Burp Intruder to perform brute force attack on the security code, we can go ahead and click on Start Attack. A new window pops up and the attack begins. Due to the high number of payloads, this would take some time for the attack to complete. Once the attack is completed, we go to the results table. We are interested if there is a redirection HTTP response code. So we go to the status column and click on the column header to sort out the results based on the HTTP response code. As we see, there is one entry with 302 response code. We choose this entry and we go to the response tab. We see the location header is the /myaccount, so we have found the correct security code for carless account. To follow the redirection, we right-click in the response tab and choose Show Response in the browser. We copy the URL and go back to the web browser. Now we paste the URL from Burp in the address bar and press Enter. We get the message that we have solved the lab, and as we see, we have successfully logged in into carless account. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I'll see you in the next videos.